In a world where dreams can be born from the humblest of beginnings, there exists a remarkable story of a young boy who defied all odds. Welcome to our channel, where we uncover extraordinary tales of brilliance and inspiration. Rolls Royce makes some of the most expensive cars in the world. And yet, this $7 billion company was founded by a boy who grew up in poverty with almost no education. Henry Royce started his first million-dollar company with just 20. So, how did he do it? Henry Royce was born in 1863. His parents, James and Mary, ran a flour mill. Unfortunately, the family business was struggling. By 1867, they went bankrupt. This forced the Royce family to move to London to look for work. Even though he was just 4 years old, Henry began working his first job scaring birds on a farm, making just a few cents a week. When he was only 9 years old, Henry's father died. This was devastating, and the family's financial struggles only worsened. Henry's mother was still in debt and realized she could no longer support her children. So she sent Henry to live with an elderly couple instead, although they barely made ends meet themselves. By the time he was 15 years old, Henry had only completed 1 year of school, so his aunt tried to help with his education by giving him a small fee to join an apprenticeship program with the Great Northern Railway Company. This meant Henry had to relocate again, while his aunt managed to cover the fee for the apprenticeship scheme. She couldn't afford to pay for his housing, but luckily, Henry managed to move in with a man named George Yarrow, whose son was also an apprentice for the railway company. At night, George tutored the two boys on how to use tools. Henry found this fascinating and spent many hours practicing, and despite being just a teenager, he was soon regularly building beautifully made brass model wheelbarrows in the Yarrow's garden shed. At 17 years old, Henry began working with a tool-making company in Leeds, making just 1 penny per hour. Then he moved on to the electric light and power company in Liverpool. He worked harder and longer than his co-workers, often skipping meals instead of tinkering with electronics. After working these jobs and saving up whatever he could finally afford to take electrical engineering classes at night at the City and Guilds Institute. The skills he learned from these classes meant that by 19 years old, he could get the best job of his life, working as chief electrician for the Maxim Weston Electric Company. But this time, Henry decided to start his own company instead of looking for another new job at a different company. His friend Ernest Claremont agreed to take the risk. He was also an engineer, and together they began a new business called F.H. Royce & Company in 1884. Henry only had +20 then, while Ernest had 50. But they pooled what little savings they had and went into business together, beginning by making electric fittings. They rented a building on Wanacooka Street in Manchester and lived in a single room above the shop. The two could barely afford to eat, so they made sandwiches daily. The odds of two young men succeeding like this were slim to none. Finally, after lots of testing, they created their first successful product, the electric doorbell. These began to sell quickly, and Henry was known to work long nights at his desk to make more of them for his customers. Using their money, Henry could begin creating more ambitious, more extensive products, like generators and an electric crane. Every year they were in business, they created more products to sell, and their profits grew. In 1897, the orders in hand amounted to 6,000. 12 months later, orders amounted to PEP's 20,000. By 1899, the company's share capital was 30,000. That may not sound like a lot, but remember, this is the 1800s after modern-day inflation that equates to over $1 million. However, despite this success, Henry was already setting his sights on something even more ambitious, to create the most luxurious car in the world. Now at the time, very few people owned cars. But Henry Royce was one of the first to get a keen interest in automobiles and purchased a used 1,901 two-cylinder French car. Unfortunately, it was in such terrible condition, it wouldn't even start. But by the next day, Henry had it working again. And instead of stopping there, he continually improved all the faults he found with it. Eventually, Henry decided rather than improving this car, he should build his own, and in 1904 he custom-built 3 cars, which were given the model name Royce 10. The first car was for himself. The second was given to his business partner, Ernest. But the third was sold to a man so impressed by the vehicle that he introduced Henry to a car dealer named Charles Rolls. When Charles Rolls met Henry Royce, surely neither of them could have possibly imagined the journey they were about to embark on together. Born in 1877 in London's affluent Berkeley Square, Charles Stuart Rolls was the third son of Lord and Lady Languedoc. After school at Eton, Rolls studied mechanical engineering at Trinity College, Cambridge, where he was the first undergraduate to own a motor car. Having gained a reputation for tinkering with engines, Rolls earned himself the nicknames Dirty Rolls and Petrols. He loved cars so much that his father gave him the money to open a car dealership. This was called C.S. Rolls and Company, and he began importing French cars to sell to English customers. However, when Charles Rolls first met Henry Royce, he hesitated. He was a big fan of 3- and 4-cylinder cars, so he wasn't sure how he could like a 2-cylinder vehicle like the one made by Henry. But after trying out Henry's car, Charles was so impressed by the quality of the Royce 10, he said it was clear that they needed to work together. In December 1904, Charles Rolls and Henry Royce officially created the joint business Rolls Royce. These two men couldn't be more different. Henry was born in poverty and worked for everything he had. At the same time, Charles was young and had everything handed to him. There was also a significant age gap between them. Charles was just 27 years old, and Henry was 41. In 1904, they presented their first vehicle, the Rolls Royce 10 HP, at the Paris Salon, which would later be called the Paris Motor Show. They sold the car at Charles' car dealership for $395 each. With current inflation, that'd be the equivalent of tens of thousands of dollars. They made only 16 of these cars. Their second vehicle to be sent to market was in 1906, the Rolls Royce Silver Ghost. All of the metal parts were coated in silver and aluminum. After completing a 15,000-mile endurance run, they pulled a publicity stunt to shock audiences. They placed a cup of water on the running engine. It was such a quiet engine that it didn't spill a single drop of liquid. At the time, it was dubbed the best car in the world. And as of today, the Silver Ghost is still considered one of the most valuable cars. By 1921, there was such a massive demand for them that there was a 3-year backlog. So they opened a new American Rolls-Royce factory in Springfield, Massachusetts. Within 10 years, they had produced 2,944 cars. If that doesn't seem like a lot, Rolls-Royce prides itself on producing the highest quality vehicles even if it takes much more time. The same is true even today. Everything is still made by hand, and it can take up to 6 months to complete one vehicle. And that brings us to the end of our captivating journey through the remarkable life of the poor boy who invented Rolls-Royce. Subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos.